So, unfortunately, last week's recording uh, is bad, and I think that the reason why
Oh,
it's
right.
bad
Because it
is
cut
because
out.
well, it cut out, but also it cut out, and when it cut out, it like started gargling all of the audio, and so the second time that because it cut out the one time fully, but whenever it goes to cut out, it brings up like a little menu. I think when that menu comes up, I think it screws up the audio too. So I think that might have been because I had it behind me. So this week I'm gonna try and do it with it in front of me. Maybe it won't mess up.
Are you recording video and audio, or just
No,
audio?
just audio. Um. So okay. So chapter 31. Um. Uh. And sorry, what was your name again?
Patrick.
Patrick. Okay. So thank you for joining us, Patrick. You might be a little bit behind, but basically the way that this operates is um, I just have the U version kind of read it. I'll stop it every now and then. If you have questions, comments, or anything that you
ESV.
want to say, in ESV, using ESV mostly because I'm going to be pretty consistently referencing an app called the Step Bible, which you guys should definitely have that open because we're going to be using that a lot this week. Actually, I was kind of meh on this chapter before I really started studying it yesterday. This is actually a fascinating chapter. Like from all of the different stuff that we've been talking about, it's kind of wild. Um, and so you're definitely going to want to have that open. It's basically poor man's like Bible logo software. It's in beta right now, and it's only in ESV, which is why I'm reading it in ESV so we can like match those up. And it's just got like all the words highlighted, and you can click on it, and it'll give you the translation in like original Hebrew or Greek, depending on Old Testament, New Testament. So where we left off, in the last chapter, we had the big competition between Rachel and Leah. We had the weird magic mandrakes, and then the weird instance of the sticks. And we talked about that, and that's going to come up a little bit today. Because we get an explanation, but we also don't get an explanation, right? Basically, the explanation is God made it work, but we'll go from there. So let's start.
Chapter 31. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has gained all this wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, Return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you.
Okay, so not much to really say at the start here, but just that you have the sons of Laban really taking after their father, and Laban is kind of a jerk, and just cares about that material wealth. And so you're starting to see that they have this attitude of I know in economics there's like an actual term for this of where like you view wealth as like a pie, and there's only so much of it that can go around. And so like if somebody else is doing good, that means they're taking it from you. And it's like kind of what we saw in the last chapter. The whole thing purpose of the goats was Jacob saying, no, I'm not going to be taking anything from you. I'm going to be doing work. And as I'm doing work, you're going to be gaining as well. But also I'm gaining for myself so that eventually I can separate. But Laban doesn't want that separation, right? Laban wants to hoard Jacob and his blessing. And that attitude is obviously filtered down into Laban's sons.
So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock bore spotted. And if he said, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me.
Okay. So this chapter, we've talked a lot about like how to read the Bible, and that sometimes it's a little bit difficult to know, okay, when are things in like a chronological order, and when are things kind of structured for thematic reasons? And it's sometimes really hard to tell that. And you get instances and references to things that, okay, just wasn't there before. So like this reference that Jacob makes here to, your father changed my wages 10 times. When did that happen?
Right.
Like that was never listed. We have plenty of examples of Laban cheating him. I don't need to be convinced that Laban also did this to cheat him, but we didn't see that. Now, does that mean it didn't happen? Well, depending upon how like you want to have like a historicity thing, whatever, blah 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 blah, you can be like, oh, maybe it didn't happen because this is just a thing that he said. Okay, you're like, I think that's taking things too far, but also realizing that sometimes we just need to be comfortable with being like, okay, sometimes they're applying things differently, like in their stories back, and their stories show up differently than how we, like as modern people, would want the stories to show up. We want the stories to show up in straight chronological order. This is how everything happened, and that's not the way that we get it. We get it in these condensed versions, and we kind of just have to be okay with that. And even the thing about your wages shall be spotted, and then they all bore spotted. Your wages shall be striped, and they all bore striped. That's not the way that the story happened in the last chapter, right? It was just this deal that they made of, hey, this is if this is what it's going to be, then I'll get this. And actually, I might be remembering that wrong, but even like, wasn't it Jacob's idea? Like it was Jacob's idea to be like, hey, to show that I'm not going to take anything from you, I will take the spotted, right? And so that, or I will take the ones that aren't correct and blemished, right? And we didn't see that change. And even where he's going to say, I worked 14 years for like my wives and then 6 years for my sheep. We don't even really see where that 6 years for the sheep arrangement was made. We just know like after Joseph was born, and we don't clearly know when Joseph was born, that's when they had this conversation about how Jacob first was like, I want to leave. Laban was like, no, stay. And he's like, well, I need to prosper for my own family. And so the time delay between is the time delay between chapter 30 and chapter 31, is it a couple months? Is it 6 years? Somewhere between those two numbers, right? And so like it's a large gap of how that time frame could work. Okay.
And you could, because chapter 30 ends with it saying, how Jacob ends up flourishing.
Yeah,
because he,
because he's doing the breeding
right,
trick
but
thing.
we know that doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly.
Like that's gonna take at least several months.
Yeah,
but then that chapter even ends by saying, and Jacob like flourished or
and he
whatever.
gained male
Right,
servants and female servants.
We know
almost.
that
Yeah.
again didn't happen overnight, so then we can also assume that this, more than I would say more than a couple months, just by a glance at the text.
A considerable amount of time. Yeah.
Feeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said,
Okay. So a couple things right there. One, we talked about in the last chapter. We were like, where did Jacob get this idea from? We don't really know. But here, Jacob says that he got the idea from a dream, except this dream doesn't mention jack about branches, and like it just says, I saw a dream that the goats made with the flock were striped, and then God basically is like,